What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we have the final this week at Bungie before the launch of Season 19. I know a lot of us have been desperate for a reveal for the new season. It looks like we're going to have to wait a little longer, although in the TWAB today, Bungie speak about weapon tuning once again, some more changes that we're going to see in Season 19, but also adjustments to exotics, both weapons and armor, and as always that does include buffs and nerfs, so we'll break all of those down. And Bungie confirm a new crossover for Destiny 2, this time for Assassin's Creed, which is an interesting one. So we're going to cover everything in the video, guys. As always, I hope you enjoy this one, but without further delay, let's get into it. Before we get into the TWAB stuff today though, earlier on Bungie posted the recent cutscene from this week on their YouTube channel, and alongside it they said, as the threat of Xivu Arath looms, Mithrax has taken time to study the secrets of Nezarek's relics. Interesting that there's direct mention of Xivu Arath there, and from how they say it, this sounds like a kind of imminent threat, so who knows, that could be a bit of a tease for Season 19, or indeed the ongoing story in Lightfall. Up next though, Bungie have confirmed that there is going to be an Assassin's Creed Destiny 2 crossover, so this will be for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And much like we saw the Fortnite crossover last season, it started to leak earlier today with some of the images you can see on screen that there was going to be an Assassin's Creed crossover, and Bungie have gone ahead and made an announcement of that on Twitter with some concept art, but we can see right here, Lord Shaxx and Same 14 inside of Assassin's Creed. There'll also be some Destiny themed weapons in Assassin's Creed, including a Galahorn sword, which is pretty wild, so obviously that also means we can expect some Assassin's Creed armor ornaments for Season 19. We'll get more details about that soon, but give us your thoughts about it down in the comment section. Certainly not what I was expecting to see. And next, let's get into the TWAB. So initially, they speak about weapons arriving, staying, and leaving in Season 19, specifically for the core playlists. So Iron Banner, Trials of Osiris, and Nightfalls, and for Trials, they say what's arriving includes the Exalted Truth Soros Adaptive Hand Cannon, as well as the Unwavering Duty Soros Adaptive Machine Gun. So a couple of new weapons right there, although we don't get any visual previews or anything like that just yet. And they say Whistler's Whim, Forgiveness, the Inquisitor, and Burden of Guilt will be sticking around, but the Aisha's Embrace and Reed's Regret will be leaving the pools. For Iron Banner, we're going to see the Dark Decider Auto Rifle and Gunner's Axe return. We'll also still be able to get Allied Demand, Roar of the Bear, the Wizened Rebuke, Hero's Burden, Frontier's Cry, and Razor's Edge, but of course Forge's Pledge and Reese Walker are going to be going away. Then for the Nightfalls, we're going to see the Wendigo GL3 heavy grenade launcher back, but as a Nightfall weapon, that's an interesting one. We'll also see the Hung Jury SR4 Scout Rifle, and of course Silica Neuroma and Duty Bound will be leaving. Give us your thoughts about those down below. Pretty interested to see what Wendigo could get. But here they talk about some changes for Season 19 for weapons. And initially the full auto setting that's going to be launching. And they say on a related note, we're also aware that certain melees also require speedy clicking and are looking at something similar to full auto for a subset. So that's glaive, swords, and potentially roaming super melees. But for sidearms there are going to be some changes, and they say, with sidearms being more viable in PvP, they're reducing the zoom stat on Drang and Drang Baroque from 14 to 13. For fusion rifles, they're reducing stability from 49 to 35, and aim assist from 59 to 45, and those will be changes for main ingredients specifically. And they also say they've rebuilt the fusion rifle hipfire reticle so that it reacts more obviously to changes in the accuracy cone. So finally some changes for main ingredient there. And next for glaives, they say projectiles have not hit our quality bar for hit registration, so they've reworked them, and they'll have more reliable hit detection over the network. And glaive melee attacks can now benefit from the exotic armor perks on Synthoceps, Wormgod Caress, and Winter's Guile. But glaive melee damage multipliers have been reduced by 25 to 30% against champions, mini-bosses, bosses, and vehicles. And glaive melee base damage reduced from 75 to 67. So a bit of a mixed bag there, better hit detection, interactions with some of those exotic armor bonuses, but they have also reduced some of that melee damage. They also say with Rose returning, they've updated its stats to work better for adaptive hand cannons, so they've increased the range from 38 to 43, reduced stability from 45 to 40, reduced handling from 68 to 60, and airborne effectiveness will be 20. But for blinding effects, they say for grenade launchers, they're switching the blinding to the new arc blind effect, which has significantly reduced screen effect brightness and is overall less intrusive. They also say weapon mods that increase the effects of weapon perks don't make for interesting decisions. And they say Dragonfly, Rampage, and Surrounded perks now have their spec mod behaviors enabled by default. That's an interesting change there. And here they talk about a change to air assault, so they say it now grants stacking bonuses to airborne effectiveness, with a maximum of 2 stacks, 1 per final blow, and 2 per airborne final, and each stack will grant plus 30 airborne effectiveness. They're also redesigning Headseeker, and body shots will now increase the precision multiplier and aim assist, but additional body shots will reset the timer, and it will have a 0.55 base timer, but body shots while Headseeker is active will reset it. Another interesting change there, but for Encore, they say there'll be some changes and final blows now grant stacks of Encore and stacks grant increased stability, range and accuracy, but body shot final blows grant 1 stack, precision final blows will grant 2, and there will be a maximum of 4 stacks which last 7 seconds, with the enhanced version lasting 7.5 seconds. And they'll see plus 8 stability, plus 5 range, and plus 1.25% accuracy per stack. And here's a really interesting one. They say Seraph rounds will be appearing on more weapons next season. Could that potentially link to a Rasputin or Warmind themed thing? You never know, it's certainly possible, but they say it's the strongest mag perk by a large margin, so they've pulled it back a little and made it more of a trade-off. So they've removed the 10% range scaler, and it now offers plus 7 stability and plus 3 range. They also say tunnel vision and kill clip not being refreshable while active has always been counterintuitive, so the duration of the buffs can now be refreshed if activated while already active. But they have reduced the kill clip damage bonus from 33% to 25%, so a mixed bag on that as well. They also say redirection didn't use the standard method of checking for weak versus strong enemies, so it will now build stacks against red bar enemies and consume them on everything else, so it matches minor spec and other perks that use similar language. There are some buffs here for certain perks though, and they say they want the Hake Breach Armaments origin trait to bring down Ward of Dawn, Radiance, and Stasis Crystals in PvP, so it now increases damage versus Ward of Dawn and Well of Radiance Sword by 30%. Which is 60% with an artifact mod, and damage bonuses against Stasis Crystals have been increased by 15%. Also for Gutshot Straight, they're increasing the bonus auto rifle body shot damage from 10% to 20%, and Compulsive Reloader will now remain active down to half ammo. And on top of this, they say the high impact frame intrinsic perk can be hard to use since it switches off with a little movement, and it now allows a small amount of movement instead of turning off with any movement. On top of this, for Ambitious Assassin, they say recent adjustments give it remarkably high potential for overflowing a mag, but in areas with sparse enemies it can be hard to chain kills quickly enough, so they're increasing the allowed time between kills from 5 to 7 seconds. For Well-Rounded, the duration has been increased from 10 to 15 seconds, and stacking the effect still resets the timer. They also talk about recombination reliability issues, and they say they're tweaking it to make the function in PvP as intended, and it now grants up to 100% bonus damage at max stacks in PvE, which is 50% in PvP. On top of this, for Zen Moment, they say it will no longer deactivate on a miss, and now has a 1-second timer. Plus here, they say rewind rounds will now work as intended when hitting the cage created by Divinity. Genesis will also now trigger on breaking player shields, and for One Quiet Moment, there'll be faster reactivation after a final blow. And Gun and Run was hard to trigger in PvP or encounters with few enemies, so they also decided to half the number of final blows needed to activate it when going up against most enemy types. So a few positive changes there, but for nerfs and for box breathing, they're reducing the damage bonus on scout rifles by 5%. They also say the Unstoppable Force's damage was a bit too high for the level of investment, so they're reducing the damage bonus from 30 to 20%. And for 1-2 Punch, they're reducing the bonus melee damage as follows, from 3 times to 2 times versus most enemies with unpowered melees, and then from 1.8 times to 1.4 times versus most enemies with charged melees, and they're reducing the additional bonus versus bosses from 0.5 to 0.25. And there are also a bunch of changes to enhanced perks here. So for Unrelenting, they've shifted to plus 5 health regen, but they've removed plus 5 handling. They've removed the 0.1 second faster activation and the 0.1 second grace period upon ending, but they've added 1 second faster activation off 2 times stacks. For Enhanced Timed Payload, they've shifted from range to plus 5 stability. For Explosive Payload, they've gone from range to plus 5 reload. Then for Enhanced Firing Line, they've added an additional 10 handling when in proximity, but they've removed increased neutral range. And for Grave Robber, they've swapped plus 5 reload to plus 5 handling. Then with Enhanced Explosive Light, they've added one more charge so it stacks up to 7. For Cornered, they've added plus 10 stability when active. For Enhanced Cold Steel, weapon energy and weapon magazine capacity now add plus 10 to be consistent with other ammo capacity increasing perks. But for Enhanced Vorpal Weapon, they've changed from plus 5 reload to plus 5 stability, and this will apply to guard resistance stats on swords. With Genesis, they've removed the primary ammo overflow, and they've added additional handling. Flash Counter will see increased ammo capacity. Chain Reaction has had the description updated and provides a different benefit to swords, although they don't say what. And then finally for Ambitious Assassin, they're increasing the allowed time between final blows from 6 to 8 seconds. So share your thoughts on those, but we get to the exotics here, and a couple of reworks. So the Fundamentals perk that we see on Borealis, Hardlight and Dead Messenger is seeing a bit of a buff, and they've added stats to each element. So Arc will see plus 25 handling and plus 5 range. Solo will see plus 35 reload and plus 20 airborne effectiveness. And Void will see plus 20 stability and plus 10 aim assist. So that's a good change. Although they say Borealis needs a more substantial change, and breaking a matched shield will now refill the mag from reserves and allow your next 5 shots to deal bonus damage. Then for Jade Rabbit, they say the exotic perk is lackluster, and quickly landing 3 crits returns around to the magazine and increases the damage of your next body shot, and this stacks up to 3 increased damage body shots, but it will still reset if you reload. Witherhoard, unfortunately though, is seeing a bit of a nerf, and they're reducing the taken portal duration from 7.5 to 4.5 seconds. Of course, it is a very dominant weapon. They clarify once again that Divinity's weaken is going from 30% to 15%, but it still self-buffs to 30%. Then for Arbalest, they're reducing the body shot damage to match Lorentz Driver, and here they say Galahorn is the highest DPS rocket launcher and a great support weapon for legendary rocket launchers. So we've picked one of these roles and leaned into its support power, and they've reduced the primary rocket's impact and detonation damage by 25%. Although Wolfpack rounds are unaffected, and they say this brings it into the desired band without nerfing it past other rocket launchers. So the Galley nerf finally happened right there, and for Forerunner, they say it received an unintended damage buff in Season 18, and they've reduced the base damage from 40 to 37, and crit damage from 72 to 67. They say also they fixed the problem where crits from Deadman's Tail were landing inconsistently, and it now prefers critical hits over body hits in hipfire if both types of targets are inside the precision aim cone. And they've increased body shot damage from 46 to 54, and reduced crit damage from 81 to 80. There's a change for Darcy though that's interesting, and it now applies Jolt when damaging targets affected by personal assistant, and they've increased base airborne effectiveness of the weapon to 80. Certainly an interesting one there. They say as well that Wishender has always had a hidden damage bonus versus targets affected by Witherhoard, and they've now increased the bonus versus Witherhoard blighted targets from 10% to 25%. For Whisper of the Worm, they're increasing base airborne effectiveness to 80. Then the Prospector will see Chain Reaction added as an intrinsic perk, and Fourth Horseman has had some niche uses but ultimately suffers from extremely hard to control recoil, so they've decreased that by 50%. They say also that Forerunner is a fun weapon in PvE but never a top pick, so they're increasing crit damage by 30% and the rock's damage by 60% in PvE. They're reducing the ammo cost to activate the rock from 6 to 4, and they've increased damage at the outer edge of the rock's damage radius from 0% to 20%. For Merciless, they say its decreased charge time on hit now resets on a 5-second timer, so it'll keep it in the fully ramped up state. And they say Rat King is a lot of fun to use, but the allowed distance from allies feels a little too strict, so the radius required to activate its perk increases from 15 to 20 meters. Additionally, they're removing movement penalties on Legend of Acreus, and for Bastion, they're reducing the spread angle by 6%, which is undoing a previous nerf. There are even more changes here, and for Quicksilver Storm, they're increasing the PvP maximum grenade damage from 80 to 120, and increasing the explosion radius from 3 to 4 meters. They're also switching the rocket damage from arc to kinetic. And they say Cold Heart's 3.0 rework wasn't generous enough to ionic traces, so they're reducing the cooldown on ionic trace generation from 3.5 to 2 seconds. and it will now max out stability and reload speed when at maximum damage, but picking up ionic traces will now reduce the time it takes to get max damage. Additionally, they're increasing Grand Overture's missile damage by 50%. The safer Xenophage, it only deals area of effect damage, and it will now deal roughly half of its damage as impact and the rest as detonation, but the overall damage is increased by 5%. On top of this, they say Lightning Storm will now correctly activate when hitting Divinity's Cage. So a lot of stuff to think about there when it comes to weapons. Here though, there are some exotic armor changes, and they say for Wormgod's Caress, they've reduced the maximum damage multiplier from 7.5 to 3.5, quite a big change there, and it will be the same for Winter's Guile. There's also a change for Gyrfalcon's Hauberk, and we'll be able to gain volatile rounds when exiting invisibility, and when executing a finisher while invisible, the exotic now gives nearby allies a reserve overshield and the wearer a temporary bonus to weapon damage. So share your thoughts on all of those changes for exotics, guys, but for Season 19 they talk about artifact mods. And they say each season's artifact is focused on one of the light subclasses, reinforcing and enhancing the 3.0 updates. So in Season 19 it's time to give more love to Stasis. On top of this though, the artifact will have anti-champion mods for hand cannons, scout rifles, bows, pulse rifles and auto rifles, as well as SMGs. But we'll also see the unstoppable grenade launcher mod return, as well as Lucent Finisher, and there'll be twists on some old favourites, including a version of Passive Guard that works with glaives, and the reprisal of Breach and Clear, designed to interact with Void 3.0. And so yet more technical changes right there, and adjustments to the game that we'll see in Season 19. Once again, it is a lot of stuff to get our heads around, especially when put together with the other changes we're going to see for the season, which we've covered previously. But again, feel free to give us your thoughts down below, guys, and for today, that does it for the video. So, as always, I hope this one's been useful, and if it has, a rating below really helps us out on the channel. Also, feel free to get subscribed and I'll keep you posted with more Destiny content. But otherwise, for today, I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll catch you guys very soon.